Yeah, yeah. Making her way to the mic. They start dimming the lights. You start feeling alright. From Birmingham, home of the Teddy Longs, and the room is stutters. More once you discover. For all of the lovers, Whitney Houston and Roman Reigns. For all of the lovers, and Mickey James and Marvin Gaye. For all of the lovers, and Sasha Banks, Janelle Monáe, Silk, Sonic, and Paige. Allow me to say, look, I just found a place, sweet escape. Every one of us, I was kinda late, cause I just made it off the struggle bus. Walking by the fate, cause I know it's right in front of us. Yo, I ain't with the hate, gotta focus on what's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Steph Hardy is on the air. Had to drop a couple bars just to make you all aware. So, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. You know I go by Joe or the rest of the flow, yeah.
Hey y'all, welcome to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy, host and creator of this beautiful, fabulous show, host and writer for Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet, as well as color commentator featured on the Belladonna Division, Battle Club Pro, and Black Girl Magic 2022. But I am not alone. I am here with fabulous and very fascinating guest, who I am so happy to finally have on my show. He is very imposing and really powerful in the ring, but most importantly, he has an amazing story. So I can't wait for us to get into it. He is the Miasma, Zakk Ramses. How are you, Zakk?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. And by the way, what an awesome intro package you had. That was great. I was bumping to it while we were coming in. So thank you for having me on. Though I'm really excited to be here. Excited to get to talk.
Yeah, I'm really happy to, and thank you for the compliment. Like, I love my package. So shout out to Simon Vision Media for creating it. And also shout out to Wrestling Flow, Josiah Williams, for doing the song. It's very personal for me. It's got different personal parts of my life, my wrestling life, as well as, where I'm from, Birmingham 205. Let's go, Alabama, let's go. So, and it teaches you a couple things too. So it's a mixture of all of the things that I love into one song. So it's perfect. A lot of people love it whenever they're on. So, but this isn't about me. This is about you. So, I'm gonna ask you, when did you fall in love with wrestling, Zakk?
When did I fall in love? Again, it was, to say it was love at first sight is a little cliche, but it really was from a young age. I really figured something was going on when I would turn on what channel was it here in New York at the time? Was it My Nine? I forget what it was, when Thursday Night SmackDown was on back in the day. And I would see The Undertaker, I would see JBL when he was WWE champion, Thugonomics, John Cena, whatever it may be. And something was going on there that I was like, this is grabbing me. But to the complete infatuation, the smitten nature of my relationship with it now really began, I'd say, 2006, 2007. It was late in my elementary school days, and one of my best friends, he had really taken the dive in. He was like, "Hey, I know you've been digging this. Like, let's take a look at some of this other stuff." And we became addicts together. And every Friday we'd leave school, we'd walk home, we'd play with our wrestling toys, and then we'd throw on Friday Night SmackDown, and the rest is history. Here we are now, 16 years later, and it's what I do now, which I'm very fortunate and happy to be able to say. But that love has been a strong love for a long time, that it ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, that's usually, how it starts. It starts from you actually watching it or seeing it on television, for some people. For others, it might be video games or a reality show or something. But you found it your way on television up in New York, and your friends were also into it. So you had someone to sort of play with the toys and also watch the show with. So that's always thing. So I'm really happy that you were able to have that sort of gateway to it. So when did you decide that this was something that you wanted to embrace as a part of your life and pursue as a career?
So When I was in college, I played football. I played offensive tackle at the University of Delaware, and I had a good career there. I love the game of football as well. Um, it was during my time in college when my love really became deeper, in the sense that Delaware is it's a FCS Division One AA program, so we were there all year round. 320 days a year. We were there training, practicing in some capacity on campus, and so especially during the winter and the summertime when no one else was there, all the traditional students were back at home on vacation or wherever it was, we were there training, and so there really wasn't a lot to do in between lifting and drill sessions and class. So I fell back on the reliable of wrestling, of course. And in that time, because I had excess time, I really started to delve into, I fell in love with New Japan Pro Wrestling at that time. I really started to expand into different territories in Europe, and I really started to delve deeper into the history of wrestling in the 70s and 80s work. Just because I had the time, I was like, hey, while I'm digging, let's keep going. And so during those mid college years, I was like, okay, I love this even more than I thought I did, and I already loved it. And so as my college football days were winding down, I was like, listen, I love football. It's great. It's part of my life. But I know that wrestling is my passion. Wrestling is my be all end all. And so while I'm in my physical prime, again, physically lifting and training as much as I did, then I was like, while I'm still on this path, let's maximize where my body is right now and let's give this thing all it's got and let's go. So, I finished my final season in December of 2018, and moved myself out and got ready to go and get myself ready to get into wrestling training. And we've been going since. It was an easy flip just because I knew, all right, it's go time. No time to waste.
That's cool, because it's just fun when I think I love hearing stories of people who wrestle, but then it's like they were a part of another sport beforehand. So it's sort of like they were sort of already preparing and sort of conditioned in order to want to go into wrestling because they played such another intense sport such as football. And I love football because, of course, like I said earlier, I'm from Alabama. So, down here, football is like breathing. It was just like I grew up sort of appreciating the preparation of what it takes to prepare for that type of game, and it can be really dangerous, but it is very fulfilling for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
So when it comes to wrestling, a lot of your great wrestlers who are big stars now started out playing football. Of course, you have Aaron Corbin, you have Pat McAfee, who's a wrestler slash commentator, you have Roman Reigns, you have Brock Lesnar, you have so many people who started off playing football. Even the Usos, they played football. And it's just like when they transitioned into wrestling, it almost seemed like, of course, they had their hard work to put in with the training, because those are two totally different things.
Oh, yeah.
But they were able to have that work ethic. And it seems like you sort of had that going on for yourself when you decided to go into wrestling training, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And to your point, there's definitely mentality crossover as far as the physical nature of both sports. Obviously, they're very different. And so I shouldn't even say obviously, because that may not be obvious to people. I shouldn't make that assumption. But with that said, it's if you are prepared to work and commit yourself to the sport, then it's a jump that you can make. And again, guys like Roman or Corbin or any of the other names you listed, they wanted to be pro wrestlers. They wanted to succeed in this business. And so even though they are very different forms of physical activity, the preparation of one, definitely that foundation does transfer over.
Definitely. So what would you say is more difficult to prepare for, a football or a wrestling match?
The answer is both, depending on what we're talking about. Where pretty much, listen, with football, there is the unexpected element of, as an offensive lineman, I had to prep my technique every day for certain stunts or blitzes that the defensive line and then the core might run, and you had to be prepped, and then you didn't know what they were going to bring. They might have whipped up a new blitz just that week for your offense that you can't be prepared for, as opposed to wrestling where if someone's pulling something out that you're not prepared for in the ring, there's probably a problem. So that element is different. That said, that surprise element is there in wrestling, where again you have to expect the unexpected in whether it be reaction from the crowd or the flow of a match. Obviously, injuries happen there. Where football, the ref will blow the whistle and everything stops. In wrestling, you gotta either work through it or find a way around it, or you gotta take care of the guy you're in there with. So there's different challenges associated with both. Again, the one I always say that makes wrestling the most unique is the fact that there's no other type of sport that you have to also be so charismatic in to succeed in, where you could be again you could be Pat Mahomes and you could be that talented but have no personality, and technically it doesn't matter. I mean, he could be a stick in the mud, but he'd still be Patrick Mahomes and he'd be a multi-million-dollar athlete. Great. In wrestling, you have to have something that separates you from a charisma standpoint, or unless with your exception of someone like Lance Storm, who his gimmick was that he was boring for some people, even though I disagree. Fantastic wrestler, but unless you're the rare exception, you got to have something that pops out. Otherwise, your wrestling could be the second coming of Buddy Rogers, but it doesn't matter because you have to have that second element or third element for some people, even where it's or reinvent that second element. So it's that's a challenge that's uniquely wrestling that no other physical activity oriented sport could match.
That's really great. That's a really great separation of the two. And it was very, I loved how extensive that was. I appreciated that answer. So who was responsible, for training you, once you first started, doing wrestling, and what was the best lesson that you learned from them?
So I was trained, as I referenced before, I'm a New Yorker. I'm here on Long Island. So I'm 45 minutes outside of Manhattan, New York City and all that. I trained a little out east on the island in a town called Deer Park. And you have the NYWC training facility there, or the New York Wrestling Connection, school founded by Mikey Whipwreck of ECW fame. When I started training, it was run by Bull James, who's most well known as Bull Dempsey from his time in NXT, Rex Lawless, who's a well-known name on the independent wrestling scene, and Michael Mastretta, who's a name on the independent wrestling scene as well. Those three were running shop when I started training. And fortunately, I learned a lot from each of them. They're different as far as their teaching styles go, and the lessons they did teach me, all of them invaluable. The biggest thing that to your question about a specific lesson that I got from Rex and Bull, specifically with Bull being, he's a big, strong, stout man, and then Rex is a taller guy, still a big dude. Their lesson to me, again, being, the 6'9", 280-pound monster that is Zakk Ramses, as I like to tout. Their message was, you have to make your size your edge, where, as a lot of people in this day and age, and especially independent wrestling, and frankly, pro wrestling in America in general do, even if you're big, you go and wrestle like everyone else, and then what does that make you? You're just like everyone else. So their emphasis was, hey, you have something that you can't teach, you can't learn, that's your size. Keep it. Don't give it away. That has to be what separates you and what specializes you. And the second you don't act like you're big, no one else is going to think you're big, and then you're just another guy on the card. So that was a very important lesson that they taught me that has yielded benefits for me my entire career thus far. Because again, fortunately for me, there's not a lot of guys who are the size of Zakk Ramses. So it's but a lot of guys that are my size, or in my, whether it's as far as just muscles and strength goes, or height, a lot of them aren't taught that lesson, and they do just kind of bump around and roll around like a 185-pound guy does. And it's like, all right, so if you're doing that and they're doing that, what's the difference? So that's definitely a huge lesson I learned.
Yeah, you basically had a who's who of teachers there.
True, true.
Yeah, and it seems like they really did teach you, how to utilize, your body and sort of make yourself more unique in that way.
Mhm.
Because of course, even though there's like a diverse amount of people in wrestling, it's like you could have like maybe 4 or 5 tall people at a time, but it looks like they were teaching you, all the ways of which, you can utilize your body to sort of stand out and sort of make that, okay, this is my thing, but I'm going to tell you why this is my thing and how it's different from the other thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's amazing that they were actually able to teach you that. So shout out to all of your teachers. Like, that's
Oh, yeah.
really great. So when did you feel that you were ready to sort of, chart your course into wrestling after your training?
So I had a little bit of an interesting story with that. For me, as I said before, I came out of college athletics, and when I just started my training, one of my coaches at the University of Delaware, he sent me an email that came out to college coaches through just like a mass portal or whatever from the WWE, where they're like, hey, if you have any current players or former players that are interested in potentially trying to be a WWE superstar, have them follow this link, blah, 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 fill out this form, et cetera, et cetera. Because as most people know, WWE is a big fan of athletes transferred into wrestlers, whether that's collegiate, professional, anywhere in between. That they like to think that if you have the ability to succeed at either of those levels of a sport, they can transfer those intangible skills into being a wrestler, which is a fair enough mentality in some situations. But so with that, I got the information. I was like, well, that sounds good. So I was like, let me plug in on that. So I sent my information in, and as is anything, it's, I'm certainly not the only person that would have liked an opportunity with the WWE. So they had a lot of people sending information in. And so they said, hey, just hold tight. We have your information. We'd like to bring you in. It's going to be a time and place thing, but eventually we'd like to have you. So as I said, I started training in 2019. And so I shared this information with my trainers, of course, and they were like, hey, that's great. What we don't want is to hinder you in any way here. So they're like, WWE, they want to have these former athletes come in untouched lumps of clay, where it's, hey, you don't have any habits or preconceived notions about wrestling. We're going to teach you everything from the base up, so that way the WWE style. That's what they want. So my trainer said, hey, well, we're going to train you. You want to be a wrestler? We're going to get you there. But we got to keep you under the radar, so when your time does come to go down to Orlando, we can at least pretend to say, yeah, he doesn't know much. He's just been training basics for the last however long. So we kind of played it a little coy, and I trained, and I had my first matches and whatnot, but it was very much in-house. I wasn't out there on the road really much, or if I was, it was getting reps in places where it was more of a training atmosphere. It wasn't really trying to promote the brand like I am now. And so I did that for my first year. And I got an email in January of 2020 where I was told, hey, we want you to come in for our March tryout. So I was like, gung ho, let's go. So I started training, got my ass off. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse, so I apologize if I can't. But
No, it's okay.
but I started working as hard as I could. I got myself in the best cardiovascular shape of my life. Train. And, I flew down to Orlando, and I flew there on March 11th. And if that date sounds familiar, it's because that is the day the bubble burst in COVID world, where, we got there, we did our medicals and all that. That night, March Madness got canceled, the NBA got shut down. And literally, we went to me and a bunch of the other guys who were in my tryout, some of which are on WWE television now. Trick Williams, for one, was in my car that day, and we were like, you don't think they're shutting down the tryout, right? And I'm like, no, they would have said something by now. Like, obviously we're still going. The next day we show up and we're all ready to do promos day one, and in walks Canyon Seaman and William Regal and all these guys, and they're like, hey, thanks for coming, but you're going home. I was like, well, that's great. So we did not have the tryout. Obviously we didn't know what we were getting into, nor did they. And so they're like, yeah, we'll bring you back in a month or two and this blows over. Obviously that wasn't quite what happened either. Such is life. But obviously disappointing and frustrating, but went home and begun the COVID era did. And I eventually did go back in November of 2020. They did reschedule my tryout, and I went down there. And again, Tricker was actually at that follow-up tryout as well, along with the 2B Braun Breaker and a couple other guys who are now on NXT television. We were in that same tryout together. And unfortunately, my number wasn't called at the end of it. Happy for those guys. Lots of talented guys that were in that tryout that are doing great stuff there. And I'm super happy for them. I would be lying. I said they didn't make a mistake in not bringing in Zakk Ramses, but wouldn't be the first time someone has overlooked a diamond in the rough. But hey, that's how it goes. I have no doubts that I end up where I need to be in the long run anyway. But to your initial question now. So that whole time, I wasn't putting myself out there, A, between COVID, and B, between this plan to kind of stay on the low. So after the tryout, and then after getting the word that they weren't going to sign me or bring me in, it was beginning of 2021. I was like, all right, well, the COVID hysteria was beginning to settle a little bit, and it was becoming a little more safe and manageable to get out there, and shows were beginning to pop back up in independent wrestling. So I was like, all right, you know what? I no longer have to, play this game that I'm not trying to be a wrestler, because I am. I always want, again, it's no disrespect to WWE. I'm here to be a pro wrestler. That's all I ever wanted to be. Now they've eased up on the terminology and they're more willing to say pro wrestler, but there was a time where that was a dirty word. Fact was, it never was to me. I didn't want to be a superstar. I wanted to be a wrestler. So I'm like, it's game time now. So spring of 2021, after things became manageable, I was like, hey, let's go. And so May of that year was when I finally really kind of got onto the scene. And since then, it's been full speed, no breaks, no stops. And it's now we're here to go, and I'm here to let people know that Zakk Ramses is here to play. So very long-winded answer. Gave you more context than you probably needed, but that's the full story.
No, like I appreciate those stories because I feel like it's so funny. I was just having a conversation with one of my mentors like that, where one thing led to another thing, led to another thing, led to another thing.
Yeah.
So that's perfectly fine for your answer, because it's so crazy, like, to think about all the people that you tried out were people that you see now, on a regular basis, who are finding their stride in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like put your best foot forward and you tried, even after the pandemic and how that sort of just turned everything upside down,
Yeah.
with life. But even after that, you stayed the course and you still tried. And even though you might not have gotten the call up like you may have wanted, which I can understand could be disappointing, because I deal with that a lot of times too. We all do in life, but at the same time, you use that as sort of like a motivation to sort of make yourself better and a little bit more marketable in terms of who you are as a wrestler and what you want to portray. And stuff like that. And that's a very different story than I've heard from certain wrestlers, like during the pandemic. I've heard various stories where lots of wrestlers, found different things to do during the pandemic, whether it be through training or through characterizations, or just keeping themselves in shape in order to prepare for the next time shows opened up again. So your story is a little bit different, but at the same time, it's still very valid in the sense that you use that lesson to sort of propel you forward, and just help you to just build yourself up from it. So I think that's really amazing, how that happened. And I feel like this only means that one day, they might get you again. Like, they're gonna get you again. Like, I feel it.
Listen,
Like,
I would tend to agree. The story's just getting started here. I'm here for a long time and a good time, so it'll come around.
Yeah. Yeah. So during the pandemic, how did you sort of keep yourself, mentally centered? Because that was a tough time for a lot of people. So
Oh, yeah.
how point where you weren't wrestling, like, how did you sort of keep?
So on a couple different fronts, it was a challenge, of course, as it was for everyone. But physically, especially at the beginning when there weren't gyms and those types of facilities, I was like, hey, to your point about other people who were like, you got to stay in shape for when this ends, because you never knew. And again, with the ending I had with my initial tryout in March, I was like, well, if these guys call and say you got to come back in May, I'm going to be ready. Even if I have nothing at my disposal right now, I'm going to do what I have to do to be ready. So I was in my backyard, using empty gas canisters from the grill and some cinder blocks used to keep the tarp down when we went camping. I used whatever I had as materials to train. Um, and my brother and I, we makeshifted a little gym in the yard, as many people did. But I physically, I found a way, and then mentally, again, I knew that I the tryout was still the goal, but it was like, because, as I said before, I always wanted to be a wrestler. I love wrestling. This has been my passion. I was like, all right, well, this is a great time for me to work on the character and the understanding piece of wrestling in a deeper way, where fortunately I have a lot of friends who are big wrestling fans as well, as I referenced earlier, where we would sit and literally for the first like month and a half, when like there was literally nothing going on, we would text each other and say, hey, well, let's pick 3 matches to watch today. Any era, any company, any style. Let's watch it. Let's talk about it after. So we'd watch a tag match from the Old Japan Misawa Kawada era. Then we'd go and watch a random match from the New Japan Cup in 2005 with Giant Albert and Yuji Nagata, and then we'd go and watch Hogan Rock WrestleMania. Like, it was like, we'll just pick anything, and for me, it was like, all right, if I'm watching Talloway right now, I'm working on the way I'm picking apart his in-ring psychology here. If I'm watching The Rock, it's what's his facials, how is he moving, all those little things that I always did pay attention to. But now it's like, hey, I got nowhere to be, so I'm going to watch as much as I literally can. We go online, and it's like, hey, what's this great match I've never seen before? Oh, Benoit and Bret Hart from the Owen Hart tribute show. Never watched it before. I knew it was a classic match. Let's watch that now. Like, all these little things I've been missing in my wrestling study and fandom, like, pick those apart. And I sat there and I watched all these matches. I'm like, what separates these people's characters? And it helped me create the Miasma entity and the visual that became Zakk Ramses, where up until that time, in accordance with the kind of keeping a low profile, I wasn't the promoter of the NYWC promotion, which is connected to the training academy. He kind of created the character for me, but it wasn't really my character. It was just kind of like big man in black dickies and the singlet. It was simple. It was basic, which nothing wrong with it. But I was like, this isn't my character. This is just a character for me to go and get my reps. But so in that time, it's like I created the all the little pieces, and some pieces ended up not sticking, for what became Zakk Ramses once I really kind of got rolling in the independent wrestling scene and whatnot. So on multiple fronts, it was very productive for me. And unfortunately, again, it helps when you're healthy and your family's healthy. So fortunately, I didn't have anything that really kind of blocked up the process in that. I was able to really focus. And so for me, that period was definitely a good launching point into the post-COVID era for me as a wrestler.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Like, sorry, the server was going crazy. But yeah, that's really great that you were able to do all of that and even watch all of those matches and stuff in order to like pick and choose all the different parts that you want to learn from. Like, because the thing about wrestling is it's a constant textbook. Like, there's always something to learn for each passing year, for each passing time. Like, there's history, there's even the stuff that goes on in the current and present day that happens you can also learn from or take from. So I think that that's really cool that you were able to do that and sort of feed that into who you became as a character, which I'm very fascinated to sort of get into it with you about, but we'll get into that a little bit later though. So what do you do outside of wrestling to sort of chill out and just have fun with? Like, do you watch or binge watch TV shows, or what is some of your hobbies?
So I am a very big music fan, which you may be able to piece by some of the posters and whatnot behind me. The camera's supposed to have to turn to check. But I got Black Sabbath over here. Sabotage is my favorite album of all time. I've got the Black Label Society there, which is Zakk Wylde of Ozzy Osbourne fame. In that corner, you can barely see the Swedish rock band Ghost. So I'm a big music guy. Again, I'm fortunate being a New Yorker that, again, I'm a train ride away from Manhattan, where there's always music from both mega bands and small bands. Last night I was literally in the city and saw a group called the Winery Dogs, which is kind of like a hard rock, groove rock super group. That was a tremendous, tremendous show just from a musician standpoint, just bonkers. But anyway, love music. I'm a big vinyl music collector. Yeah, I burn a lot of money on vinyl very regularly. My wallet is not happy with this hobby because it's especially with certain bands and certain records and certain variants. You could get it for $15 at Walmart, or you can get the one-time pressed translucent green variant that was only printed in Brazil for $95. I'm like, well, I want that one. So it's an unforgiving, expensive hobby, but I do love it because I'm a collector in general. Again, I as a kid, I collected wrestling toys, and I collected movies on DVD and Blu-ray when that was more relevant before streaming services became as popular. And I was always a collector. I always liked that. Even as a wrestling fan, I loved wrestlers that collected belts. I thought it was so cool when you look down someone's Wikipedia page and you saw all the different belts they had. I appreciate that mentality, and so I very much am that with vinyl. And plus, I also believe that it's the best medium to listen to music through. Where I wouldn't quite call myself an audiophile, but I do think there's a noticeable difference between listening to a song on Spotify and then listening to something on vinyl. Where, simplistically put, one's a bigger file, one's a compressed file that's put onto your computer and you can listen through your AirPods with. It's just literally the size literally generates more texture and sound. So you're on that level alone, it's great. But I could go on and on, as you can imagine. But to that point, yeah, I'm a big music guy. I am a big film guy, as evidence of my recent projects. Obviously, I have an appreciation for the cinematic world. I think Avatar was best movie of last year, and I was not a fan of the first one. In fact, I
Oh wow.
back in 2009, I was like falling asleep in the theater during the first one. It did not catch me, but The Way of Water, I think, just going into it, one of my buddies was like, "Hey, you want to go see this?" I was like, "Well, I guess I may as well. I should check it out as a film fan." And I came out of it like, I am blown away and can't wait for the next 4 movies here. Like, 3 technically, but still. It's just like incredible. Visually, story wise, I think it was segmented so well, and it's just fantastic stuff. But point being, a big film guy. My hobbies, they bounce all around. It's fortunately I keep myself busy with my fandoms here.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, I love what you said about telling the difference between vinyl sound and also like the audio sound digitally. Like, a lot of people really don't think about that, and it's so crazy
Mm-hmm.
because just last week I was listening to Beyonce because I love Beyonce.
Oh,
Um
cool.
I was listening to her I Am Sasha Fierce album on
Okay.
CD at work, and I was just like, I still have a collection of all of my CDs from my childhood. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
like I'll go and listen to the CD and just be like, man, this is so great. Like, just to think of the nostalgia of
Oh
it.
yeah.
But then it's so funny when you go sometimes on streaming, they'll have certain songs, but then sometimes they'll have a few songs that you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then you go and you look on the CD and you can actually listen to the songs over there. But
Yes.
there are pros and cons to each one. But I
Absolutely.
love that you collect vinyl. Like, that is a really cool thing. Like, my boyfriend loves vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
The last vinyl album I think I bought him was, I believe, the 1960s version of, it was a single of Time by Billy Stewart. That's his favorite song.
Okay. Very
And I
cool.
bought that for him because it's a very special, it's a special moment that he and I have with that song.
That's
And then
awesome.
I also purchased him the live version of the Arctic Monkeys album when they were at Royal Albert Hall, because that's his
Okay.
favorite band.
Okay.
So, and then
Okay.
the album was clear too, and it was limited edition. And
Mm-hmm.
he was so
That's where they get you.
excited. So it was just, huh?
That's where they get you. They add in those pretty variants, and you're like, all right, well, I gotta splurge and get that one now because it looks so great. It's that's where they hook you in, but it's so worth it. It's so cool.
Yeah, it is. And he really loved it, and he really appreciated that type of thing. So
Mhm.
it's just I appreciate that like that, and also that you love music. And speaking of Black Sabbath, were you one of those people who were absolutely thrilled when Ozzy Osbourne had that song for War Games last year?
Listen. Yeah, I anytime we get a little Sabbath on WWE television, I'm gonna be ecstatic. And fortunately, Triple H, being a metal fan, he gets it, and he'll plug those in here and there. Yeah, it was we had War Pigs last year. I look back to WrestleMania 28. He had The Memory Remains from Metallica as like the theme song for his match with The Undertaker in Hell in a Cell. He used For Whom the Bell Tolls for his theme song coming out for his match with Taker at 27. I'm like, yeah, it's nice when he uses that influence to give us some good music. I'm like, you know what? People might not always agree with your booking decisions. I will agree with your musical taste. So no problems with
Yeah,
that.
his musical taste is really good. If it's one thing wrestling does do, it exposes you to some rock, okay?
Oh, yeah, that's
Like
true. That's true.
seriously.
Yeah, no doubt.
Especially in the 90s, you just love it. It's so incredible. Like all the rock bands that you get exposed to, like Godsmack and Metallica and
Yeah.
all of that. Like it is absolutely amazing, that's, there, cuz I remember the first time I heard War Pigs, it was in that commercial for
Mhm.
War Games, and I was just like, this song really sounds like something big is about to happen with this
Mhm.
match, because I'm a fan of War Games from when I saw it. I had seen it like during the WCW days, of course, because I was younger and understand
Yeah.
all the nuances of things.
Mhm.
But watching it and hearing that music with the advertisement now with War Games, I was like, dang, this really feels like they're about to destroy each other. And I
Yep.
love the song ever since.
Wow.
So I appreciate I'm glad that you had that moment. Now,
Yeah.
the thing that I love in terms of music this year is just the fact that The Weeknd is doing yet another theme for WrestleMania
Yeah.
because it's just
Listen,
like he's like the goat of Mania themes at this point. Like, sir.
you're not wrong. And again, absolutely brilliant talent. I am a big Weekend fan. I thought his album last year was one of my favorite records that came out last year. Such great work and consistent at that. I don't think there's been a bad record from that man. Just everything he's put out is gold, absolute gold. So I
Yeah.
let's keep him as just the universal theme song guy for WrestleMania. You won't hear me complain.
Yeah, not at all. Now, of course, until he might just take a break at some point, but you just never know. But literally, it's just really cool that you love music and you love collecting things and stuff like that, because that takes a level of dedication. I think the only thing that stops me from collecting Funko Pops and more title belts is the fact that I don't have a lot of room.
Yeah, no, Funko Pops are dangerous because
They are.
I have avoided that for the room portion, like you said, and also just the fact that again I've got enough expensive habits. I'm trying to be a pro wrestler here, which is expensive enough as is.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to go and okay, oh great. There's a Peter Griffin Funko Pop I don't have. Gotta grab that. Oh, okay, and here's uh, Papa Emeritus II from Ghost. I grab that. It's like there's just something for everything where it's like it'll never end. So I gotta stop myself from entering in because it won't end well.
Like you get sucked in every time, and then it doesn't help that they're so affordable too.
Yes, no,
Oh
it's like a
god.
rabbit hole. You never come back.
You never come back. Like seriously, it's hilarious. I
Yeah.
could go on and on all day about Funko Pops, but
Mhm.
let's just stop there. So to get back to the wrestling component, so since you've started training, you got your career started, and now you call yourself the Miasma. Like, where did that name sort of come from? And what's the background of it? How does it relate to you and how you wrestle in the ring?
So once again, my musical fandom shines through here, which as we talk here, you'll see music influences a lot of my creative decision making, and so in that period that we spoke about here, you've laid this interview out really well because we keep referring back to what I already said, which is great. It makes my life easier. I don't have to retell everything. So as I was saying before, when we were in that period of kind of creative discovery during the early pandemic, I was looking for something that kind of explained what my character was supposed to be, but wasn't just like the destroyer or the big bad guy. It's like you gotta have again a little flair to this. So I was thinking, and ultimately these things have to come organically or naturally. You can't force it. And so, as I referenced earlier, you can barely see it in the shot here, but I'm a big fan of the group Ghost, Swedish gothic rock band that's really blown up in the last 6 years or so. They're fantastic. They've got a whole gimmick to them it's really creative and very influential on me as a creative, but also just as a music fan. But so on their 2018 record, Perkel, they deal with it's not a concept album, but it's conceptual in the sense that they deal with the idea of the Black Plague. It's a heavy piece that kind of runs throughout a lot of the tracks, and so within that they have an instrumental track right in the middle, end of the first half, called Miasma, and so at that point it's a beautiful 6-minute song that it just kind of it's supposed to give you this kind of feeling of spread and consumption, and ultimately a Miasma, to the initial question here, it's a dark, overwhelming force that kind of spreads and consumes everything around it, and the more you fight against it, the worse it gets. And so in the situation of the record, the plague was a miasma, and that was the idea there, where the first half of the album, they kind of they talk about how the plague comes in and it spreads throughout, and people are questioning their faith or whatever. And so at that point, it's like, all right, it's spreading now, and it's mayhem. And so to me, I was just skipping around Spotify. The song came up. I'm like, I love this song. I'm like, what does this really mean though? And so I kind of started doing a little more research, came to that, and I was like, this works for what I am, because Zakk Ramses is, again, I'm this big lumbering man who I come into a ring and I'm just going to destroy you. I'm going to physically beat down on you over and over again. I'm going to make you regret coming into the ring. And you can fight back. You can, give yourself all the hope you want, but you're just delaying the inevitable of me putting you down for the pin or making you tap out. That's the Zakk Ramses story in a nutshell. That's who I am. And so when I learned what a miasma was, or miasma, or however you want to pronounce it, because it's a Greek term, and so us in our American tongue, there's a million ways to pronounce everything. But it encapsulates what I want it to be. And again, to that point, it's a unique term that most people remember. Even if they don't know what it is or how to say it, they remember it. And that was my idea, where I'm like, everything I want to do, I want to be memorable. I want to stand out. I want to be significant. And so I'm like, this is a term that, again, it caught my attention because it is different. And so I bought into it, and I thought it gelled. And long story short, here we are. Got my sweatshirt and got a series named after it, and the story goes on. But it's the goal of it was always to make it jump out and catch you. Then people kind of look into it and like, it's talking about like the spread of an odor or whatever. It's like, yeah, a miasma can be an odor, but it's the motion of it, that it's just going to descend and settle and you can't escape it. That's the miasma. And when you are lost in the miasma that is Zakk Ramses, you're in trouble.
That sounds like some major supervillain type stuff.
Correct.
Like seriously, like that just sounds like some Jafar, like some Thanos, like it's giving Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah.
It's like it's even giving Roman Reigns in this iteration of time.
Yeah.
Like you're just delaying the inevitable. Huh?
I'll take that comparison any day. And being compared to Roman is a highest regard, so I will not complain.
Yeah, like that's just, it's like you're delaying the inevitable. Like you can try and fight, but at the end of the day, you're gonna lose. Yep. Like every time I hear inevitable, I just think of Thanos always. Yep. He just says, I'm inevitable. But even though he did lose, but whatever. Yeah. It's just that it's so unique in the sense I've never heard a name like that, like in terms of being called that. So I think that's really unique and really cool in the sense that you found it, through your love of music, and you sort of applied it to yourself and your wrestling style and your persona. Like it's really unique, and it's special, and I think that we need more of those types of things, and because it's more organic and it's just really cool how that happens. So I think that's really interesting. It's also really dark and, twisty.
Yeah.
But either way, it still works. And in talking about the dark and twistiness of it, you do have your series, Miasma the series, which has all of his episodes, 5 episodes up right now. And I did watch all of them, and it's really good. I really like the show. It's really, easy to follow and easy to sort of like get into and just get sucked into the world of it. But
Yeah.
what's so funny is it feels a lot like reality, but then it's not.
Mhm.
But either way, like what exactly inspired you to really like start this show and sort of create these characters surrounding you as this dark figure, leading, I guess you could say, cult in a
Yeah.
sense, towards this level of darkness, but then you also have like these people fighting against you and your leadership too. Like, where did that come from?
So again, we keep coming back to the idea that to succeed in wrestling, you have to stand out. You have to do something different. You need to be unique. You got that's you look at every success story in wrestling. There, you're never going to confuse Steve Austin for someone else. You're never going to confuse Ric Flair for someone else. You know, you Jim Londos is Jim Londos. You know, Frank Gotch, even though we don't know much about his personality, you know who he is. George Hackenschmidt stood out because he physically looked different from everyone back in the day, and he was the Lion. And it's like everybody through the history of this sport had that thing that made them them, and it was you couldn't mix it up. So to me, I was like, okay, what can Zakk Ramses do that people aren't doing or haven't done? And listen, in 2023, that's a tall order because everything's been done. It's a different ball game than it was in 1914 or even in 1990. You know, it's the especially with the nature of the internet and social media. If something was done in Europe, 40 years ago, you might not have known about it in America, and you could have done it, and it wouldn't be an issue. But now you know what's going on everywhere at all times. So to be completely creative and original is even tougher. So, as I, in my travels, I head up and down the East Coast. I'll go from Maine to North Carolina to West Virginia to Pittsburgh. My travels take some time. And so within that, lots of time in the car to think and come up with ideas, and some stick, some don't. But in my travels, I was like, all right, what within my talents and within my passions can I do to make myself further stand out? And so I came upon again the idea we spoke about before of my cinematic passions. Like, okay, I could definitely do something with film here, but what exactly? Because it's like, you have like something like Being the Elite that is a great product that got the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and all those guys, like it made them stars for sure. But you can't do that again because it's been done, or even like, a video log like Sammy Guevara does, something like that. Like, great idea. It worked for him. It helped get him over, but it's been done. So I'm like, well, what can I do that is in my realm, but doesn't feel like a copy of what someone else has done that's already been successful? And so to me, I was like, all right, well, I love film. Let me just don't overcomplicate it. Why don't I just make a true narrative film about the character that is Zakk Ramses, but not a pull the curtain back. Like, let's focus on the character. This is the character. And like, it's kayfabe if you want to use those terms, but at the same time, it's not in the addressal of wrestling being a performance. Everything about it is as if the story you're seeing in the ring. This is what's happening when I'm in between All or Nothing Pro Wrestling on Saturday and Dynamite Championship Wrestling the following Saturday. Like, this is what's happening in between. It's all part of the narrative that you see in the ring, but it's expanded in a way that, to me, I was like, I can't think of anybody in independent wrestling having done this before. What I always say, I think is the closest comparison I can think of is the Broken Universe that Matt Hardy made in 2016 when he was in Impact and obviously continued into WWE and whatnot, where, he created the broken Matt Hardy character and created the characters of Señor Benjamin and, King Maxwell. And, he had all these different entities and created these filmed out stories. And granted, he leaned into comedy for that. but especially if you saw like when he left WWE in 2020 and he was going to AEW on his YouTube series, he really delved deep into the concept of Matt Hardy as a vessel, and you have different personas that have taken on the vessel. Like he went into depth on that because I mean, as anyone who's followed Matt Hardy's career knows, he's a creative mastermind in a lot of ways. But to me, that's the closest thing I can compare. But Matt Hardy was on national television and had a lot of money and had a lot of resources, and the way he presented again was more comedic and a little more, a little more kind of like you're in wrestling. This I wanted to be like, hey, you could watch this, as many people have, who are not wrestling fans, and this is a drama that happens to be about a pro wrestler who happens to be in this cult about this Greek god that they've decided they're going to try to accomplish their goals through the dark and shady realm of pro wrestling. It just but like it's not like you have to be a wrestling fan to get it. You kind of had to be a wrestling fan to kind of get into a lot of what Matt Hardy was doing with the broken stuff. That's where I'm like, you know what, this is going to be my edge. And so that idea birthed Miasma the series. And again, fortunately, because I know my character and I know what I like, I had created a lot of these ideas in my head over time as far as what the Miasma was. And I've been like hashtagging Quest of Erebus for a while. I'm like, I kind of know what that means, but let me dive deeper. What does that really mean? And what exactly do I want Erebus to be here? And so one thing led to another, and I wrote the script and we casted it out, and we assembled a great casting crew and shot it last summer, taking the last 5 months or so to edit it together in post-production, and now the world gets to see a little taste of what I've got up here. So it's a labor of love that I'm very happy to get out there, and I hope people just see that again. I bring something unique to the table in the ring, but I bring a lot to the table, and this is just kind of showing some of that.
Like, and it's really interesting in the sense that if anybody hears about you or sees you wrestle at a show somewhere, they can find your name and then they can find your show, and then they'll be like, oh, what's this going on here? And then they'll watch your show and just be like, oh, it'll add like another layer of like coolness and mystery to it, in the sense, okay, we saw this man wrestle here, but he also has this show going on here where he might have all this creepy stuff going on too. And it sort of blurs the line between reality and what's really like not reality. So I think it's really creative and really, like you mentioned, a lot of different different series that have happened, like the Broken Universe, like Being the Elite, and even in reality, like Up Down Down, even though that's not really like a series, but it's still a real life thing involving wrestlers and video games and different games and stuff like that, and it growing into what it is. And then you even have Trick Williams, who you previously mentioned, who has his own show, Trick and Ain't Easy, and I haven't watched it myself yet, but I do plan on it because he's one of my favorites. But it is a very unique way. I'm glad to hear that. Is to get yourself out there. So I'm glad that you took a chance to be that creative enough to do something like that. Like, that's really great. Yeah. That's amazing. So did you study Greek mythology at all to like, pick out the Greek god of darkness that you found, or was this like a written Greek god?
So Erebus is a legitimate god in Greek mythology, and so kind of again, as I was piecing together the Zakk Ramses character over the last couple of years, I'm like, again, Miasma is a Greek term, so I'm like, whatever I do, I want to kind of stay in that vein here. So, as I was kind of diving in, I'm like, again, to really expand on this how I want to, I wanted to kind of wade into uncharted territories. And what I mean by that is, everyone knows Zeus. Zeus has been in, Hercules and this and that. Everyone kind of has an idea of who Zeus is and how Zeus works. And same with Athena and Ares and a lot of these large, well-known Greek characters where it's like, listen, God of War, I could easily have just gone that route and it would work for my character and it would be great. But to me, I'm like, but I want to have control over the creative process with this without people being like, well, I know a lot about Apollo, and I know that this doesn't really make sense. It's like, I want to be able to, hey, I'm taking a character, I'm taking an entity that does exist, but it's loosely defined enough that I can identify it and twist it to how I want to fit the Zakk Ramses story. And that's where I landed with Erebus, where again, Erebus is, the god of darkness. And beyond that, there's really not a lot written about Erebus aside, there's some like early creation myth that kind of is alluded to in the series at times. But there's no physical manifestation of Erebus that was ever really depicted in art or anything like that, and there's not really a lot of stories about the character of Erebus. And so to me, I'm like, it hits on the ideas that work for Zakk Ramses, but again, I can make this cult, and I can have Erebus be, I refer to Erebus as it, and I refer to and Erebus is never seen in the series because I'm like, I like this mystery where it's like, there's not a lot of documentation, so I'm going to kind of take this where I want because I can. And so that was kind of how I landed on the Erebus influence here. And again, it stands out because, again, the quest of Erebus. Well, what does that mean? Who is Erebus? Then you go into the series and you'll learn a little about Erebus through the primordial oracle of Malum and all these other absurd names I created where it's like, this is all, I like the air of mysticism and the lore piece behind it. Because again, to me, as a fan of television and film, it's like, that's what I like. I was talking with a buddy recently. I don't know if you ever watched the Avatar: The Last Airbender series
Yes.
on Nickelodeon. Fantastic show. Probably in my top 15 or 20 shows of all time. Brilliant. But I always say my favorite character is Uncle Iroh. Favorite. What I think makes his character work so much is the whole show you hear about how this guy is a beast. Like when he was in his prime, you couldn't stop him. He was the Fire Lord apparent. Like, if he really wanted to, he could mess anyone up. But you never really see it. Everything you hear about the Dragon of the West, but it's like, but there's no time where you really see Iroh like messing people up, and by the end when he escapes prison, you see him like training and working up, and then you see all the bodies laying around the prison cell, but you don't see Iroh actually escape. It's the leaving it to the imagination, the creative aspect of our own minds is way more fun. And when you create that aura, it's like, woof, Iroh is the man, and I don't even know why, but he's awesome. I didn't see anything, but he's awesome. That's what I wanted. And that's also, as you watch through the series here, partially due to resource and monetary limitations, but also with that mentality in mind, there's a lot of things I leave to the viewer's imagination. What happened in between scenes here? Well, what do you think happened? Put the pieces together. Is it as bad as you think? Maybe it is. You got to figure that out. And that, to me, that's fun. That's where the imagination runs wild. And in wrestling, that's where things get fun.
Absolutely. Like that is just really cool. And I just love how you thought so much into that, sort of using elements of television that you have seen in the past and even in the present to sort of add to your show. And then the idea that it feeds into the creativity component. Because while I was watching it and just watching you in the first episode argue with the first with the first guy who's just like, no, like you're doing this and you're only using this for your own personal gain. And I'm tired of it. As like a part of me is just wondering, like, what is he cooking up to where he might, take away the miasma's like aura, the persona, like, or just kick him out. Like, what is he cooking up? Like, is he doing something major? Is he doing something big behind the scenes? Like, the fun part of watching stuff like that is the fact that, you don't have all the answers immediately.
Absolutely.
And then you're in for a ride. So I think that's amazing that you were able to create that, even though, you was created with limited resources. But either way, it's your baby and you made it. So and then that means the more resources you get, the bigger it'll be. So
exactly.
Hey, that's really cool.
Any
I
producers
like
out there that want to throw some money my way, let me know.
Oh, yes. Cheap plug, gotta do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's just a really cool way to like put your character out there. But in terms of your character, is there a world where the miasma could possibly be a good guy?
Oh
Maybe?
yeah, I mean, where at the end of the day, as you see in the show, I'm an anti-hero where I'm the protagonist. Technically, you are following my story, and technically, yeah, I guess you should be rooting for me, but I'm not doing good things. But it's that other people are also doing bad things, so by comparison, you kind of want to root for me because you're along for the ride. I compare it to Walter White from Breaking Bad, where Walter White's a horrible human being, but you follow him from the beginning and you're invested in his story. And so, even though he's a drug kingpin that ruins his family's lives and everyone's around him, you're invested in Walter White. I'd like Zakk Ramses to kind of be like Walter White, even though I'm not half the actor that Bryan Cranston could ever be. But to that point, on premise, I'm not a good guy. But as does happen on some shows that Zakk Ramses show up on, I do portray the role of the babyface or the good guy. And so I'm a believer in the fact that in wrestling, to flip the switch and be like, I'm a good guy now, and then I'm bad. It's like, all right, like this is a little too cut and dry. To me, it's like everything's about perspective. Where I can be a good guy where I'm like, hey, listen, I'm here to wrestle. Like let's do this the right way. Let's do this honorable. Let's see who's the better man. On premise, I'm not happy go lucky, but I'm not a bad guy. I'm here to compete. I'm here to get after it. Other times I'm like, I'm going to squish you and watch you squirm because I'm bigger and stronger and I have domain over you because I'm the man. And it's like, all right, now he's an arrogant jerk and now I don't like him. So, but it's like, but what I do, it doesn't really vary that much. It's kind of how it's framed. And so kind of even to your point about episode 1 where, I'm arguing with, Shiran. We, technically, what he's saying isn't wrong. What I'm saying isn't wrong within the scope of the Grim Guild and within the quest of Erebus. And there's no right or wrong. It's difference in philosophy. And so, and again, this is where, you can see the wheels really start turning for me, where this is where I have fun, where it's like, what is good and bad? And, then I get really philosophical and people are like, oh boy, get this guy off the mic. But, to me, that's, to your initial question, can Zakk Ramses be a good guy? Yeah. Right place, right time, right situation. Absolutely. I can be the good guy. There's plenty of places I do wrestle where I am the good guy, where I'm just here to, I play the Steve Austin role, where again, just to wrap up the answer to your question here, on paper, if you write down the 1998 Stone Cold Steve Austin character, he is a heel, where what does he do? He flips people off. He drinks beer. He attacks authority, and he does what he wants, and he doesn't give a damn. He's not, on paper, he's not a good guy, but Steve Austin was the biggest babyface in the history of professional wrestling, and everyone loved him because he was just awesome, and he was cool, and people liked seeing him, and he happened to be kicking the Undertaker around when he was part of the ministry, or he's kicking around, again, Vince McMahon, who's the evil corporate monster. So it's like, is Steve Austin necessarily good? No. But is he bad? He's taking care of the actual bad guys, so we like him. So that's my technical answer for you.
He's like, even in seeing, him being a representative of Erebus and the darkness, and the god of darkness, it's just a part of me is just wondering, like, is there another world where he could possibly be a good guy? Because it's just, I mean, he has a heart within him.
Oh yeah,
but I just don't know.
Situation. It could happen. It could happen. Yeah. Listen, if I wasn't if I wasn't being a little manipulated by the powers that be, and I'm in a different realm where I'm just Zakk Ramses, pure and simple, and I'm just out here pursuing championship glory in wrestling for the sake of athletic competition. Yeah, that could be. I'm not all wrapped up in darkness, like you said. There's some good in there. I'm like the Grinch. You might have to peel away the layers a little bit, but it's in there. It's in there.
Definitely. And speaking of championship accomplishments, like, what would you say is your biggest goal in terms of wrestling? Like, do you plan on, of course, you did mention, that your biggest dream is to possibly reach the highest level and maybe go to WWE or, but do you also have an open mind towards any other promotion, if the opportunity were to arise? Because wrestling's a big
Absolutely.
world. Like, it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
My goal from day one has always been to wrestle in Japan. That's always been the absolute dream. As I referenced earlier, again, credit to you for lining up these questions. Right, I just keep bouncing back. But you know, from when I really became absolutely infatuated with pro wrestling, it was New Japan Pro Wrestling in the mid 2010s, and that's where I would love to be. I would love to wrestle for New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'd love to wrestle at the Tokyo Dome. That's to me, that's the pinnacle of pro wrestling in its modern incarnation, and that's the be all end all. Within that goal, there's a lot of other places that I would love to end up in. I would love to wrestle and compete in, whether that's in Japan in other promotions like Noah or All Japan or DDT or Big Japan or any of these other places. That would all be awesome. Whether it's obviously in America. Yeah, listen, of course, I had to try with the WWE. I'd be a fool to not want to experience something with the WWE at some point if it presents itself. But again, AEW has a fantastic product that I would be more than happy to work with, and obviously with the New Japan dream, the working relationship they have is absolutely a positive in that regard as well. But Impact, Ring of Honor now being back in the mix with Tony Khan's work, and even there's lots of other great promotions worldwide that I was. When I was in college, I loved watching Progress, and I loved watching OTT or some of these WXW or some of these other places in Europe. I'd love to go to Europe and work. Or, stylistically, it'd be a challenge. But listen, put me in Arena Mexico. I would love to go and experience CMLL or AAA, because that's a challenge. Where again, if someone like Brian Cage can go down there, Zakk Ramses is a big guy. I can go down there and do that too. I would love to experience it all, travel the world. My biggest inspirations are the guys who went everywhere, and obviously one of the most notable ones of this day and age is Chris Jericho, where he's the king of AEW, but he got there by traveling to Germany and Mexico and Japan and everywhere in between when he was on the rise. And so, listen, the goal is Japan. It's New Japan Pro Wrestling, but sometimes your goal isn't you have a goal that can change, but also the quest to the goal can take twists and turns that end up revealing different things to you, or at least just put you in different stop points that are also equally interesting. So lots of goals for Zakk Ramses.
Yes, and you definitely ethic, and of course go forth and do whatever it is that you would want to do in either one of those promotions. Like I said, the world of wrestling is really big, and there isn't just one big place to go to. Like, if your dream is to be in one place like Japan or anywhere else like in Mexico, you can do that and be okay and make a pretty good living off of it. So I mean, either way, it seems like you're never really in a bad situation or in a bad place at all when it comes to wrestling now. So I'm really glad that you have those goals yourself in terms of where you would want to go in terms of like your dreams and stuff. So how do you feel about the state of wrestling as a whole, and what's good about it and what could be improved about it in your opinion?
So I think in general the state of wrestling is America is great right now, where you have two major companies on national television every week. Below that, you have 3 or 4 companies that are not as widely exposed on television, but between New Japan on Access, Impact on Access, and MLW on Reels now, you have lots of quality wrestling on still on television, if not just on as broad of a scale. And you have companies like GCW and the like that are also doing great stuff that draw big crowds and get people opportunities and attention. And in the independent scene, there's lots of great wrestling going on right now. And again, I'm unfortunately part of that in a lot of different places up and down the East Coast in the US here, where just so much great talent that's just, again, waiting for opportunities to showcase what they can do. So it's a great situation on that front. Globally, there's again a lot of good things happening. I'm hopeful in Japan that we're seeing an uptick this year between Noah and New Japan. Really, kind of the last 2 months, really kind of hitting their stride with big shows and big programs and stuff like that. The Muto show this week drew bigger than Wrestle Kingdom did. That's awesome. And granted, a lot of that's on Keiji Muto's shoulders, but the guys who are on that show, it's fantastic. That's all. Everyone except for Muto is going to be, except for most of Muto and like a couple of the guys are going to be around. And they're the faces of major professional wrestling in Japan. So that's awesome. There's I'd be lying if I said I keep track as much as I used to with Lucha Libre, but I saw the release of a World Cup trios tournament in AAA the past week or so, where they're bringing in talent from all over the place right now for that tournament. I think that's really cool, where just there's a vibrancy to major wrestling right now that is tremendous, and it's exciting. And the part that I speak to, being independent wrestling the most, it's really cool where there's so many places to work with quality talent, and week to week, I'm wrestling in front of good crowds that care and are increasing at that. Which if the crowds were staying the same or getting smaller, or if there was less places to work, then we might have some trouble. That's not the case right now. So on every level, we're moving in a good direction, and it's awesome. It's awesome for the guys in the business and the gals in the business, but it's awesome for fans, because you have no shortage of great stuff to watch at home on your TV, or you go down the block and watch at your local independent promotion or at your local stadium or arena. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Yes, you are absolutely right about that. So did you watch New Japan's Battle in the Valley this weekend?
I did not, because unfortunately I had a wedding on Saturday that while I was there, I was watching Elimination Chamber. So I haven't had a chance to catch up on Battle in the Valley. I'm aware of the results, but I haven't had a chance to actually watch the show back. But between the Mercedes match and the Okada match and the Jay White match, minimally, I know I got my work cut out for me. Also, I got to watch the Kenta match too. There's a lot on that show I need to check out, but great. I mean, such an incredible card that I'd be a fool not to go back and check it out.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I understand life stuff. And then it was a lot of wrestling Saturday. Like it was a whole
Yeah,
lot between WoW, Elimination Chamber, and like Battle in the Valley. It was a lot going on. So I completely get it. But yeah,
yeah,
please watch it when you get a chance. It was really cool, especially Mercedes and Kyrie. That was fantastic. It was
I'm
really
sure.
fantastic. So yes. So who would you say are your top 5 wrestlers of all time, male, female, or non-binary?
Always tough. It's like choosing your favorite child. But if I'm gonna pick all-time favorites, I'm going to say Bruiser Brody. From a visual and big man standpoint, I love watching him to this day. I'm going to say The Undertaker. Yeah, as one of my big inspirations as a kid watching pro wrestling on television. Um, I'm going to say Chris Jericho, who, from a character standpoint and his reinvention status, yeah, he's somebody I utterly respect tremendously. Uh, I'm going to say Asuka, who I think is, she was absolutely incredible in Japan when she worked as Kana, and to me, in the last 7 years in America in WWE, she has, to me, she's been my favorite women's wrestler to watch. Even when not booked great, she still is unstoppable, and I'm glad that she's now that they're putting her in a position once again this year to kind of get back into things. She's absolutely incredible. And number five, boy, the amount of times I've had to make this list and reorganize this list and remake this list. For the sake of today, I'm going to say I'm going to say Kazuchika Okada, where to me, again, I talk about the era of New Japan that made me really get head over heels into wrestling. I know I want to wrestle, and you know the programs Okada had with Tanahashi and Omega and that stuff in the mid 2015, in like 2015, 2016, 2017. That was the stuff that I knew. Yeah, it was game over. This is what I love, and so I credit him and the way he carries himself and the way he does every little thing in that ring with such precision and accuracy. Um, yeah, I'm gonna say those five are as of 9/16 on February 22nd. That's my list, which could change by 9/17. So for now, that's what I got.
Pretty solid list. So I completely understand how it can change though, because mine changes every now and again. Except I don't ever change my number one for the men or number one for the women. My number one for the men is The Rock, and my number one for the women is Mercedes Monet, and that's just it. That's those are my two solid answers. Any other answer is just like you just gotta wait and see.
Mercedes
It
could
depends
definitely
on.
crack my list on most weeks too. And that's where like the second they announced her for Battle in the Valley, I was like, they have to put the belt on her because why? I don't know how you couldn't. But beyond that, I'm like, it's so exciting because that she, as far as being a big match wrestler in WWE, name one where she didn't knock it out of the park and then some. I'm like, now she's going to a new environment where she has less restrictions and more freedom. I'm like, God knows what she's gonna do, and so she's again, men or women aside, she's one of the most consistent big match wrestlers I think of the last 7 or 8 years. And I think we're going to get some incredible stuff from her going forward here. And then The Rock, obviously, you can never argue against The Rock being in anyone's top five. That's easy. So fair across the board there.
Yeah, and just it's just like you said, when it comes to Mercedes, there's just you're right. There is no match that you could think of where she hasn't been at the top of her game. So it's just like
No.
that's why I just love her so much. And then just watching the way she wrestles, I was just like, who is this girl? And I just love her so much. But of course, if you want to hear me talk more about that, I have 2 episodes where I talk about how much I love that woman. So let me just not do it here. And just bring the focus back to you. So, what would you say the future holds for you, Zakk?
I am as excited to find that out as you are. Where fortunately, I'm a big believer in the world is your oyster if you put the time and effort into it, and where exactly that'll take, I'm not sure. I know again, my goals are out there and they're well known. In the meantime, I'm gonna keep plugging away on the U.S. independent scene. Gonna keep building my brand. Obviously, my hope with my Miasma series is that some people will catch on to it, whether that's fans or other peers of mine in the business and promoters and whatnot who can see what I bring to the table creatively. And hopefully that can get me some traction in certain capacities. But beyond that, my goal is to get better every time I get in that ring, as far as my work goes and all that type of stuff. And so continue to get better on the smaller scale. And then, by the end of this year, I'd love to hit my first couple dates in Canada and get the international box checked finally. I'd love to get further west. I love the East Coast. It's between college and growing up, it's been home. But I'd love to get into the Midwest. I'd love to get to the West Coast. That's all stuff that is increasingly manageable. And then again, as we continue on, bigger stages, brighter lights, bigger opportunities, esteemed talent they get to share the ring with, all those things. I'm speaking in vagaries here, but ultimately at the end of the day, there's no shortage of things I want in this business, and I'm a believer that if you don't want it, it doesn't happen. And I want everything. I want it all. Give it all to me. Yeah. So, but to that point, I'm gonna do work my hardest and do my best to be in the best position I can to make as much of that happen as possible, as quick as I can. But I'm in for the long haul. So we're going to grind. We're going to find a way. And, fortunately, people like yourself give talent like me the opportunity to share our piece and, put goals and ideas out there. and speaking it into existence is half the battle. So I appreciate the opportunity to do so tonight.
Of course, I've been so happy to have you, and I truly believe that all of your dreams will come true, whether by happy, good magic or by dark magic, it will still happen. So, thank you so much for coming on the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. Just tell everybody where they can find and follow you and what you've got going on.
Absolutely. So, if you are intrigued by all this talk about Miasma the series, you can check that out on my YouTube page, which is titled The Miasma Citadel. And if you need help spelling, you can check out my sweatshirt here. But you can always just type in The Miasma Zakk Ramses. You'll find me on YouTube easily there. We'll have the whole series up on there by next Friday. The final episode will drop on next Friday. But the whole show is on there. Otherwise, if you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm just getting into TikTok here, trying to figure that whole thing out because I've avoided that like the plague. No pun intended, for a long time here because I'm not trying to get sucked into that. But I recognize you got to play the game if you want to make it work. So I'm on TikTok again, at Zakk Ramses. That's ZAKKRAMSES. Again, as you can see on my hat here, all this great merchandise you can buy at any wrestling show that Zakk Ramses is appearing on, by the way. But yeah, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, check it all out. The YouTube channel, again, it has the series, but it's also got matches and interviews. I will have this interview on my playlist of podcast appearances and whatnot on there. So you can check any and all Zakk Ramses materials on there. And otherwise, I will be in Deer Park, New York for Remarkable Wrestling this Friday. I will be out in New Jersey for Atlantic All-Star Wrestling on Saturday. Next Friday, I'll be making my debut for the Sanctuary in Hazeltown, PA, and the list goes on and on. I am up and around and everywhere. If you're in the Mid-Atlantic or the Northeast region, you'll have the chance to see me. And if you're not in those regions, tell your promoters to bring Zakk Ramses in so you can see me in person. It's a win-win. So I'm all around and all over. Give me a follow, check it out. Again, check out the series if any of this interested you. It's going to make what I do in the ring all that more interesting and all that more relevant. So check that out. And again, Stephanie, I cannot thank you enough for giving me the opportunity to speak here tonight. And again, you are a class act. Great line of questioning, as I keep bringing up. And again, giving myself and others the opportunity to speak is invaluable and definitely very much appreciated.
They gonna like I'm a very modest person, so it's just like it's hard for me to really like take compliments, but thank you so much for that, and I've loved having you. And if you ever want to come back, feel free. And you're always welcome here. You have a home here now. So yeah, I can't wait to see what else you have cooking up on the Miasma Citadel and everything else that you've got going on. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But please know, if you guys are watching, thank you guys for watching. You guys can follow me, your girl Stephanie Hardy, on Instagram and on Twitter at Queen Steph Hardy. Listen to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast everywhere you get your audio shows. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Hardy Wrestling Podcast, so we can get those subscribers up and everything. And also, if you like what you hear, of course, give 5 stars, give amazing reviews and stuff so the show can continue to grow. We've had a really great month this content because of course we're wrapping Black History Month and going to Women's History Month, so we're going into that as well. So of course, this has been the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy and the Miasma Zakk Ramses. Till next time, bye.